What's up, Tim? What's going on, everyone? Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. We're doing some roasting. What's up, Grace? Welcome in, everybody. Welcome to the live. It is, Grace. It is a beautiful day for sure. I don't know about that, Grace. We've got the Ethiopian Misty Valley in the cooker. And we are roasting it up. Hope y'all are having a good weekend. Grace, how's your day going so far? Okay, okay. Good to hear. Spent the day at the pool with your husband. That sounds fun. I've seen pictures of your husband. He's a good looking guy. Hey, what's up, Rocky? These are Ethiopian Misty Valley. Yirgacheffe. Delicious. Trying to keep the momentum here because a recent batch of these beans, I think, turned out a little bit baked. So trying to just keep some steady momentum here throughout the roast to make sure we have a good temperature increase throughout to make sure we don't bake these things. So that's what we're going for. And we're going to go for like an espresso roast, maybe like a medium roast. This bean at a medium roast makes a really good espresso. So that's what we're going to go for today. Rocky, did you enjoy any coffee today? Grace had a flat white. That sounds delicious. Flat white's a good drink. Colombian Supremo, says Rocky. That sounds delicious at a local coffee shop. That sounds awesome. All right, we've got some good momentum here. We should be hitting first crack very soon. Starting to hear some pops. All right, 7:30, first crack. Got a nice rolling crack here. I need to go grab my oven mitt real quick while this finishes. Have you roasted any Colombian beans? I don't think we have done a Colombian. That's a good question. What's up, Chihuahuas? Thanks for the heart me. Thanks for the repost. The number one fan. Uh-oh, I lost my pen. There we go. All right, we hit first crack at 7:30. I think we're going to go until 9:30, and then we're going to pull these beans. Start to cool them down. Alejandro, thanks for sharing the live. Really appreciate you. Grace, thanks for reposting. Appreciate you. Make sure to drop us a follow if you don't follow yet. We are like 5 away from 700. We're almost there. Almost there. All right, we got to pull these beans. Get these in the cooler. What's up, Dougie? Big moves. You burnt those? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think you're trolling. I think they look pretty good. I dated a girl whose family roasts coffee. I'm actually not. Well, if you dated a girl whose family roasts coffee, I don't know if you're qualified. Maybe you are. But what do you think burnt means when it comes to coffee? Curious. Do you think that anything past a light roast is burnt? Do you believe that dark roasted coffee does not exist? Is that not a thing? Curious. Oh yeah, these are beautiful. Beautiful big moves. Beautiful. Oh man, they smell so good. They don't smell burnt at all. I just got to pick out some of the defective ones. Brendan, my dude, not burnt. That's what I'm saying. What's up, Brendan? Welcome to the live. Yeah, so I went a little more aggressive on the heat with this roast because we tried a roast of these beans recently and they tasted a little bit flat, kind of like they were lacking something. So my conclusion was that I thought they were a little bit baked. Not totally baked, but they just tasted like they were lacking something. So went a little bit more aggressive with the heat on this one to try to make sure that we kept heat momentum throughout the roast. So hopefully this roast turns out a little bit better. We'll see. We will see. How's everyone's Saturday going? Anyone have any big plans for the night? My plans? You're looking at them. You're looking at them. Look at our chaff situation. Very chaffy. As always with these natural processed coffee beans. They produce a lot of chaff. What's up, Joel? Welcome in. Again, we are 5 away from 700 followers. If you feel so inclined to drop us a follow, that would be much appreciated. If you don't follow already, of course. So here's what the roasting log looked like for that last roast. And it smells like it turned out pretty good. As we wait for the machine to cool down so we can do our next roast. So we kind of want to start the roast from the same temperature for repeatability purposes. What's up, Poncho? What's up, Logan? Whoops. Whoa. I didn't realize you could make that bigger like that. There we go. Okay. Let's do another roast. Shall we? All right, this next bean. This is a Brazilian, also a natural processed. Lower altitude bean. If I remember correctly, this bean is pretty susceptible to tipping. So I'm going to have to be careful. I'm going to have to be careful with the heat early on. So I'll probably keep the heat pretty low for the first couple of minutes. And then we'll kind of crank it up to progress the roast forward. All right, let's get her loaded up. Let me update my note sheet. Time, fan, power, event. Start with 8 ounces of green coffee. Put the chaff collector back on. And here we go. We're off, people. We're roasting. We're roasting coffee. It's that easy. Press of a button. And again, I think we're gonna sit with the heat at a 1 for probably a couple of minutes. Let these beans dry out. Coffee with Ito. What's up? Thanks for joining. Right now we've got the fan at a 9, power at a 1, and we just started the roast. Here's our timer. So I was just telling the audience that this particular bean, this is a Brazilian bean. It's a natural processed. It is pretty susceptible to tipping. I've had a really difficult time roasting this bean without a significant amount of them coming out tipped. So I'm trying to figure out how best to approach roasting this bean. So I'm going to keep the fan at 9 and the power at 1, probably for the first 2 minutes before I start to crank up the heat to see if that helps. I've pretty much come to the conclusion that it's impossible to prevent tipping with this bean, but if I can get to like 10% of the beans tipped, I would be happy. Because my previous roasts with this bean have been pretty tips. So fingers crossed. You've never used a fresh roast. Are you a roaster? Do you roast coffee? If so, what do you roast on? Fresh roast is a great machine. It does a really good job. It's fun. It's fun to work with as well because you can do a lot of manipulations here. Okay, so we're gonna start to increase the heat. So we're gonna go to a 9 and a 2 to give us some momentum here. Use a Skywalker. Nice. Those things are awesome. Those things are awesome. I would love to have one of those one day. They just look so cool. How long have you been roasting? And my apologies if we've already had this conversation before. High bean is great when the Bluetooth works well. 3 years now. 3 years. Nice. I bet you have learned a lot in your 3 years' time. We got to crank the fan down a little bit. For 3 minutes, 8 and 2. Move this stuff that way you can see the notepad. Thanks for the likes, Ito. Really appreciate it. Also, just as a reminder, if you don't follow me, feel free to drop me a follow. We are almost to 700. We're trying to get to 700 tonight. Appreciate all you guys stopping by. And I hope you're having a good Saturday. A lot of bad roasting to get a good cup. Agree. Hey, Ito, thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. Yeah, my first roast for sure was pretty terrible. I feel like getting my first good one was pretty quick, but they were inconsistent for a while. Like some good ones, some bad ones, some good ones, some bad ones. I still struggle with some bad ones every now and then, but I feel like for the most part, they're pretty good. I've been roasting for roughly 5 months now, like 4 to 5 months. So we've done a lot of roasts in that time period, though. What's up, Zach? Welcome in, man. Hope you're having a good day. Ito, how often do you roast? Hey, Zach, thanks for the like. Appreciate you, man. Pain point is I like light roasted coffee. It's very hard for me to get a good light roast. Okay, I see what you're saying. Do you think that's the roaster, or do you think that that's just roasting in general is just hard to like lock in the light roast? 9 out of 10, you're at medium. Yeah, I would say most of mine come out medium as well, for sure. I do like medium roast though, because we're getting more into espresso, and I feel like a lot of the beans that I roast, if they're roasted to medium, they make a really good espresso. Zach, love your stuff. You really helped me with my fresh roast journey. Nice. Love the fresh roast family. Zach, when did you get your roaster? How long have you had it? And how are things going? As we try to keep the momentum here. Ito, it's me and my roaster probably. Yeah. It's one of those things that you learn with every roast. And I'm sure you're probably documenting your roasts and everything for repeatability and trying to learn from mistakes and stuff like that. All right, we're going to crank down to 707, fan 6, power 4. I think this should kind of carry us forward to first crack, hopefully. We'll see here. And we'll see how much tipping we have. Hopefully not a lot. What's up, Chris? Welcome in. What's up, Norna? About 6 months, and it's definitely been a trial and error thing. Totally agree, Zach. Totally agree. Some good ones, some bad ones, and some decent ones. Think we're at first crack. I think this bean's kind of hard to tell. What's up, Johnny Q? Brendan, glad to see you're live again. I got my roaster and beans from Coffee Bean Corral are on the way. Let's go. Love to hear it. Which roaster did you go with? Did you get the fresh roast or did you go with a different one? Nice. Brendan got the fresh roast SR800 with extension tube. Love to see it. Love to see it. It's a great setup. All right, we're going to think about pulling these very soon. Let them go a little bit longer. You're going to follow the guide for the Misty Valley Yirgacheffe. Nice. Yeah, if I remember correctly, that was a good roast. It turned out really nice. Okay, we are at 10. We're going to pull this at 10:30. And we are there. Uh-oh, we lost some beans. They're flying everywhere. That was unexpected. That's okay, they stayed on the table. That probably looked really funny. Come here, beans. Come here, beans. I try to turn the fan down when I pull the lid off. Sometimes it just doesn't work very well. Brendan says, "How did you figure out how to roast it for specific beans?" That's a good question. To be honest, I still feel like I am learning that. Sorry, let me turn my tripod this way. That's a little bit better. I still feel like I'm learning how to roast different beans. Like this bean I'm roasting right now is a Brazilian natural processed lower altitude bean than I'm used to roasting in terms of altitude. And I feel like they roast a little bit differently. They're more susceptible to tipping. We'll see how these turned out. I do see a little bit of tipping. It doesn't look crazy. But Brendan, I would say a lot of it was just research. Doing a lot of Googling about different beans and how to adjust roasting those beans in the roaster. Like, for example, on the fresh roast, because there's a chaff collector, for example, the natural processed coffees are going to produce a lot of chaff, which can clog the chaff collector, which is going to contain more heat inside of the roaster. So when you're roasting natural processed coffee, you might just need to keep your eye on the temperature. You may not need quite as much heat because there's not as much heat escaping out of the roaster. So there's just like little nuances that I think I have mostly come to learn just by buying the bean and roasting it and trying it. So now I try to buy beans in like a decent quantity. Like I'll do like a 5-pound bag or like an 8-pound bag of the beans. So that I have a lot on hand so that I can do some trial and error and learn how to roast the specific bean. Like I feel like I have my kind of standard overall method where I'll start with the fan high and the power low to start the roast. And then I'll just kind of like slowly either increase the heat or turn down the fan over time throughout the roast. And just kind of monitor how the beans are doing. I try to hit first crack for the most part, like around 7 minutes. So this roast, it was 8 minutes. So it was a little bit late. But also, like with this bean, it's kind of hard to tell when first crack happens because they don't crack quite as loud as other beans. So there's just a lot of different nuances. So I actually don't know if it was 8 minutes that we hit first crack. It could have been a little bit earlier. Um, so yeah, for the most part, it's really about trial and error. I would just say a good Google search whenever you buy a coffee bean to type in like, hey, here's the processing method, here's the origin, like the country it's from, here's the altitude that it's grown at, and just see if there's any resources out there that say that give you any tips about how to approach the roast. But for the most part, it's going to be trial and error and adjusting over time as you kind of roast some batches and then taste them and see how they taste and kind of adjust from there. Brendan says, "Have you had to throw any batches out?" So I would say I've only thrown out a couple of batches. The first batch that I roasted, I threw out because like so many of the beans were scorched. So a scorched bean. So here, let me pull one of these beans out. Let me pull one of these beans that is tipped. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but this is a bean right here that is tipped. You can see the end of the bean kind of has a black or a dark mark on it. So that is a roasting defect. This is pretty much unavoidable in your roasts. You're always going to have some beans that have this roasting defect. It's kind of a matter of how many beans in the batch. So if you only have like 5% of the beans that have tipping, you're probably not going to notice it in the cup. But scorching, however, is where literally like there were parts of the bean that were like chipped off and just like completely burned. And it was like half of the batch had that on it. And I brewed it up and it just tasted like a completely burnt cup of coffee. So that was the first batch I ever roasted. And the reason that it happened is because I was following some blueprints that I saw online, like recommending fan and power settings for the fresh roast. And a lot of the resources that I saw, they did start with the fan high, but they also kind of started with the power high. So they would start with the fan 9 and like the power on 5. And I think my specific machine, for whatever reason, I don't know the reason, it just gets really hot on low power settings. So the machine just got way too hot, way too fast, and burned the beans. So that's what happened. And I would say, Brendan, for you, I think following my recommendation for Ethiopian, that's a good starting point, I would say. But also just kind of pay attention and see, like monitor how the roast goes. And then when you taste it, you might be able to tell like if the roast was burnt or if it was baked. And then you can kind of adjust your settings from there. Because not every machine is going to behave the same. So my fresh roast and your fresh roast might behave a little bit different with the different settings. But yeah, I would say the blueprint that I posted is probably a good starting point, and you can start from there and then kind of adjust based on what happens with your specific roaster. So I know that was kind of nuanced, but that's one of the fun things about coffee roasting is there's a lot of nuance to it and a lot of like adjusting on the fly. So here's another tipped bean here. That one's probably a little bit more obvious. But I think in general, there's not a whole lot of tipping here. A lot less than I normally get on this bean. So I'm happy with that. Yeah, no problem, Brendan. I hope it goes well. And if you experience any issues, feel free to send me a message. There's definitely a few people that have kind of been messaging me on TikTok on the side, kind of explaining some issues that they're having, and we've kind of gone back and forth and tried to help kind of get them on the right track. But I will also say I am still very new to this. I've only been roasting for about 5 months. Um, so yeah, just continue to do your research, and where you're going to learn the most is just getting the roaster, throwing some beans in there, roasting them, tasting them, and if the cup of coffee doesn't taste right, you can go to Google or like your search engine of choice and just kind of type in what you're tasting. Like when baked I've baked some roasts before where the coffee is still drinkable, but you drink it and it just kind of tastes flat. Like it doesn't really have that like coffee punch, like the really good tasting coffee punch. Like you can still drink it, still tastes like coffee. It just feels like it's kind of lacking something. So I went to Google and I just kind of typed in like, hey, my coffee tastes flat. I'm roasting on the Fresh Roast SR800. What could be an explanation as to why the coffee is tasting a little bit flat? Um, and the way that it described baking coffee beans, I was like, that's exactly what I think is happening here. And then I was able to come back to the roast log for that roast and see that the roast might have plateaued at some point throughout the roast in terms of continuously add. Basically, what you want to do is continuously slowly increase the heat throughout the roast. You don't really want it to plateau, if that makes sense. So if you get to a certain setting on your fresh roast and the temperature reading is sitting at 380 and you let it sit there for like 3 minutes, that's probably going to bake the beans because the beans kind of lose momentum. And then they don't really get to the point where they're able to caramelize and like fully develop those flavors, if that makes sense. So at least in my limited knowledge. Yeah, no problem, Brendan. I hope it goes well. I think as long as you go into it having a plan, having a blueprint is a great idea. Having a general idea as to what your settings are going to be, and then just document everything, like all the changes you make, write them down. And then a good idea, which I always forget to do this, but if you're going to be roasting a lot of batches, I don't know what you're going to store them in, but you can number your roasts. Like I'll put a number 2 up here, and then on the bag I'm going to put these beans in. I'll write a number 2 on the bag just so I know for certain that this is the roast. That way, like if I taste this coffee roast and it tastes off for whatever reason, I can come back into my roasting log and try to diagnose what happened. So, all right. These smell really good, though. They smell tasty. All right. Okay, guys. I think that is going to do it for tonight. I appreciate you guys joining. I think I'm going to do one more roast, but I'm going to record it like normal. I'm just going to do like a normal TikTok post with the next roast. So be on the lookout over the next couple days for that video to post. And then, yeah, as always, if anyone has any questions or anything, feel free to send me a message on TikTok and would be happy to chat further. I hope you all have a good Saturday and we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye.